the word for knowledge and its variations is mentioned several times in that ayah, because this is the secret of Ibn Adam, is that we're people that have the capacity to learn. We have the potential to learn. So if we exercise that potential, then the angels actually ask forgiveness for actually thinking badly of us. And that's why they say, they ask forgiveness for the children of Adam. And even the Prophet ﷺ said, even that whales in the ocean will ask forgiveness for the righteous people, the people that do good in the earth. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if you come into the masjid just to remember Allah, then this is one of the great blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, yubahi bina al-malaika. Also, the Prophet ﷺ said that no one will sit in a majlis and not remember Allah or make prayer on the Prophet, except it will be tiratan lahum yawm al-qiyamah. It'll be a source of remorse for them on the Day of Judgment. Just to be in a masjid. And so many of us, you know, we have jobs where you get together, they don't begin it with prayer, they don't end it with prayer. They don't say Bismillah before they do their work. They don't say Bismillah when they eat. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Kul amran the balan, every affair that have any weight in this world that doesn't begin with Bismillah, he said it's abtar, ajdam, aqta. There's no barakah in it. And so even all the pursuits of science in the past were pursuits with Allah in mind. Everything that human beings did in the past, even you look at Newton, who gave the world calculus with Leibniz. Newton was a devout, he actually considered his greatest contribution his commentary on the Bible, even though nobody reads that. They learned calculus, but they didn't read his commentary on the Bible. But he was a man of devotion, so his science, he saw his science as an act of devotion. And the Muslim world was like that. Everything the Muslims produced, they produced with this understanding that devotion is the highest thing in the world. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We only created humans and the spirit world to be devotional. The abid is the one, the devotee, the one who's devoted to his Lord. And so knowledge, the Prophet ﷺ said, one of the signs of the latter days is that people يُتَعَلَّمُ الْعِلْمِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. Knowledge will be acquired for other than Allah. And that's a proof that he was predicting secularism. Because there was no secular society before. In fact, arguably America is the first secular society in human history. The idea of creating a society, novus secularum, novus ordo secularum, you know, a new worldly order. Because that's what it means in Latin. Apparently it's bad Latin, but a new worldly order, a new order. So the word in Arabic for secularism, they always mispronounce it, the Arabs. They say ilmani, which gives people think it's related to ilm. But it's actually, the original ta'rib was almani. It's related to the world. That was the original, from alam. So it's the secular is the worldly. So secular people are worldlings. They're people of the world. This is all they see. This is all they're interested in. This is all they want. And so everything they do ends up being a worldly pursuit. They want dunya. Now the problem with dunya, the biggest problem with dunya is the actual, it's in the Arabic derivation of the word, because dana, yadnu, one of the meanings of it is to reach out for grapes, but they're always out of grasp. They're always just out of grasp. Because no matter what you get in the dunya, is somebody recording? Are you recording? Yeah, he asked not to record. Yeah. No matter what you get in the dunya, one, it's never enough. If you have one house, you start thinking about two houses. No? You know, if you have, the Prophet said, if somebody has a mountain of gold, the Ibn Adam, he'll only want a second one. He said, nothing will fill the mouth of Ibn Adam except the dirt of his grave. That's it. But then he said, two never are satiated from this world. Taribu dunya wa taribul ilm. The seeker of dunya and the seeker of knowledge. And he said, Innama bu'ittu mu'allima. I was only sent to teach knowledge. But what is the knowledge he was sent to teach? It's not worldly knowledge. In fact, when he went to Medina from Mecca, because he was from a merchant class, there's almost no agriculture in Mecca. If everybody who's been there, you're lucky to see like a plant in Mecca. It's amazing. It's ardun ghayri di zar'in. It has no agriculture. And so when the Prophet went to Medina, and he'd been there as a child, but he went when he made his hijrah, they were people of agriculture. So they had these date orchards, and they would do this ta'been, which is to pollinate the dates. So they would do, because date trees have a dhakar and a untha. They have male and female. The male produces the pollen, and then you have to pollinate the female, and that's how you get the harvest. So he walked by one day, and he didn't know why they were pollinating. And so he made a remark about it. And so these are people that were completely convinced about the Prophet ﷺ being a messenger of God. So if he thought it was strange, they decided not to do it. Now these are people obviously that inherited this, so it was going on for probably hundreds, if not thousands of years. So they didn't pollinate that year, and they had a bad harvest. And then they came to the Prophet, they asked him, he said, Antum adra bi umuri dunyakum. You know about your dunya. In other words, I'm not here to teach you about dunya. Like, well, why would you look to me? You're farmers, you know how to plant dates. I didn't come to teach you how to plant dates. So his knowledge that he was giving was how to transform a human being from his potentiality to his actuality. Because we were created, every single person in this room has an intellect. But are we using the intellect to the extent of its possibility? This is the question. And we know we're not. I don't think anybody in here, if they're honest with themselves, knows that we have all fallen short of our potential. We're great time wasters. And part of this is that kutiba ali ibn Adam al-naqs, like Imam al-Ghazali says in Ayyuha al-Walad, he says that it's just a decree that the human being is going to feel deficient by just his very nature of being a human being. You're going to feel deficient. So this is knowledge, but it has to be restored, because all of knowledge that is beneficial and useful is sacred in our tradition. There's nothing in our tradition, if it's a beneficial knowledge, there's nothing in our tradition that says that it should be for other than Allah. So if you're a doctor, in fact, one of my favorite books, which I read a lot when I was young, is a book called Al-Madkhal ibn al-Hajj. He was a great Moroccan scholar. He ended up in Egypt, but he was from Fas originally. He was from Abd Dar clan, so he was a Sharif from Quraysh. He wrote a book called Al-Madkhal. And the reason he wrote it is because his teacher, who was from Andalusia, who also ended up in Egypt, Ibn Abi Jamrah, who wrote a famous commentary on Sahih al-Bukhari, he was sitting with him one day and he said, most people lose great benefit in their lives because they don't have niyyah. They do things without niyyah. He said, I wish somebody would write a book for tasheehun niyyah, to rectify the intentions of people. And Ibn al-Hajj, in his introduction, he says, I knew he meant me. And so he wrote this book, Al-Madkhal, which is an amazing book, and it hasn't been, a critical edition hasn't been done of it yet. It really deserves a critical edition. But he took all of the occupations of the Muslims, and he showed how that occupation could be a devotional practice. Even the street sweeper. He said, a street sweeper, they should make niyyah to keep the streets pure from najasa, so that Muslims could pray without any fear of najasa. The bookbinder, he said, you should bind a book with the niyyah of preservation of knowledge. So he made every single aspect of the deen devotional. Everything that you do. So if you're a doctor, you know, it's what an amazing gift to be a doctor in this time, because there's so many jobs that are meaningless. There's so many people doing really meaningless jobs. And so to be a doctor, to be a dentist, to be somebody, a nurse, you know, one of these EMT people, or one of these paramedics. These are people, firemen. I mean, these are amazing jobs, because they're jobs that can very be easily transferred into devotional jobs. It's a little difficult if you're working on Game Boy or whatever the latest thing is. I don't see how you could really make that a devotional practice. Or if you're in a bank, taking people's homes away from them. Those are difficult. That's why you should try to get out of jobs that aren't, you know, meaningful, if you can. Some people it's difficult, but if you can, it's better. But this age, and every age has its problems. This is an age where it's very difficult to have halal sustenance. In fact, some ulama argued quite some time ago that the halal was mustahil. You'll find this in the books. Some of the ulama said there's no more halal. All money is going to be problematic. And the Prophet ﷺ told us at the end of time that people that didn't directly eat usury would be covered in its dust. So most of us have credit cards. Look at what they've done, the banks, what they've done to this people here in this country. It's amazing. I mean, the Arabs still work in cash. You know, if you go to the Arab country, they don't like credit cards because they know what it means. Somebody's getting money that's called samsara. Somebody who shouldn't have anything to do with that transaction is making money for it, the simsar. So you go to the store and you give a credit card, they're taking 4%, the bank. I mean, if it was $100, after about 20 different transactions, they got the whole $100. It's amazing what they've done to do that. So they're trying to get rid of a cash economy, because one cash economy is people are free, right? Nobody can trace what you want. Once you have a credit card, they can monitor everything. Now, most of it is just to create profile. I mean, I talked about this in the 90s, if some people who've been with me a long time, like people, because I was reading about this stuff in the 90s, like they had these data centers, like in Oklahoma, and they were monitoring all the purchasing, which is why they have the, like Safeway, you know, what's your club number? See, initially they'll give you like 10%, but then you start noticing they don't really give you any discounts after a while, right? Because all they want is your data. So then they do aggregate data analysis, and then they work out what are the most important things, what are people buying. So this is the world we live in now. It's amazing. And the Prophet ﷺ, he predicted so many of these things. It's really stunning. But that one thing alone, that people would learn for other than the sake of Allah, that's secularism. That's going to school just for dunya. And so our tradition, you go to school for Allah because you were created to know. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. That's the most important thing. That's the command, to know that there is no God except the one living God, sustainer of the heavens and the earth, the one who created all of us, who amazingly, I mean, look at all these faces, and every single one of them is unique. From the same essential material. He takes 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 32 teeth, you know, hair, all these different hairs, like people, some have lots of it and other people don't, and then people get envious. It's amazing. But Allah, He gives to whom He pleases. Some people, their tribulation is in their hair. I had a friend of mine, he was very hairy on his body, but he was bald, and he said, I don't have a hair problem, I have a distribution problem. You know, so, and look how generous Allah is, because it's quite rare in women, you know, they don't go bald like the men do, right? So there's a few things that I could do, but I thought what I'd like to do is look at some of the aspects of the Prophet ﷺ that to me are some of the most striking aspects. But before I do that, I'll just say that this college is, a lot of you are the people that made this possible. Your donations, your help. One of the things that I think all of us have pain in our hearts about is that Islam appears ugly to a lot of people. And it's such a beautiful religion. Like we all, those of us who know this religion, especially those of us who are converts, because we have the advantage. I mean, many of you might have gone through periods in your life where you were very far from your deen and things, and then you come back, and there's benefits in that. It's sad, but there are benefits in that. The Prophet ﷺ said that خيركم في الجاهلية خيركم في الإسلام إذا فقهوا. The best of you in Jahiliyyah are the best of you in Islam if they understand the religion. But Sayyidina Umar said, you know, they don't know Islam who haven't known Jahiliyyah. Because you can take it for granted, which a lot of Muslims do. They take it for granted. And so it's a great blessing to have this religion that we know is beautiful. We experience Ramadan, the amazing qualities that come with that month, the communion with our brothers and sisters in food and in prayer. There's nothing like it. There's no other religion that has Ramadan. I mean, the Christians used to have Lent. Now it's like they give up like chocolate. Yeah. Somebody told me that they would fast for 6 months out of the year if they could drink coffee in the daytime. Muslims always. But our religion is not that. We haven't changed the religion in that way to where fasting now is just giving up coffee or tea or chocolate or something. We're still doing what the Sahaba did, and that's an amazing gift. Even this masjid, I think, I've said this before, but if somebody came from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, even 1,000 years ago, and came into the masjid, they would recognize it. Whereas if a Christian from the 2nd century came into a church today, I guarantee they wouldn't recognize it. If a Jew from the time of Moses came into a synagogue today, they wouldn't recognize it. They wouldn't, but alhamdulillah, this is one of the miracles of this religion, is that even though we're as fallen as we are as a community, because we've fallen very far from this exalted ideal that our Prophet and his people gave us. And when you think about it, I mean, just think about this. He had 13 years of real tribulation, and then 10 amazing years of his time in Mecca, in Medina. And then the next 30 years are amazing, up to 61 after Hijrah, when Ali, the end of Ali's radiallahu anhu, his period, the Caliph Ali. The success of this religion is unprecedented in the history of religions. It's unprecedented, I guarantee you. There's actually, they have these models that they have up online, and they show the spread of religions. They have this amazing graphic where they show the spread of religions. All the religions spread very slowly. They just really slowly. And then right when Islam comes on the scene, it's like, whoosh, the whole thing just turns green. It just spreads so fast. And one of the things we just finished reading in the book club, this amazing book by Arnold, they called The Preaching of Islam. And one of the things that he shows is the spread of Islam continued up to the last caliph of the Uthmani period. And then he basically stops. He said he didn't do much after that because he said there wasn't really a lot of da'wah activity anymore. So I thought it was really interesting that he recognized that with the end of the Khilafah, it's like was the end of da'wah. And which one preceded the other? Because even, believe it or not, the Ottoman Caliph supported Alexander Russell Webb here in his da'wah center in New York. this American. He was a consul in the Philippines, and he ended up becoming Muslim. And then also Killiam, Abdullah Killiam, who was a Victorian Muslim, he became Muslim. He was supported by the Ottoman, the Dawla, al-Bab al-Ali. Like they were supporting dawah enterprises in these countries. It's amazing. And they used to make dua during Sultan Abdul Hamid's period. They used to make dua for America. Amazing. In 1838, when Al-Sa'id, the ruler of Oman, and people forget how powerful Oman was. Oman extended all the way down the East African coast, all the way to Mozambique, right? And which is still, there's large Muslim populations in these places. But they were a trading people, and they noticed these American ships coming into the waters, trading ships. And they saw how well built they were. You know, these were called Ironsides. One of the things, the reasons why the Americans, they created a navy fairly early on, and their navy was amazing because they used this Georgia oak to build the ships, and they called them Ironsides because the oak was so strong the cannonballs would bounce off of them. Because of this Georgia oak, it was a special wood. And so Al-Sa'id got worried because he saw that these are powerful people. So he actually sent a ship load of gifts to the Sultan of America. This is a famous true story. It was in all the newspapers. There really should be like a film about this because it's so fascinating. So he sent this ship with all these gifts for the president, but he called him the Sultan of, you know, Wilayat America. And when they got here, the sailors made quite a show in New York because the ship was called the Sultana, and it arrives in New York it went all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, across the Atlantic from Oman. So he was actually thinking, you know, about you give gifts, it's something that you do to kind of say, look, we're friendly, you should be friendly with us. And so among the gifts were some ima, which were sent back. You know, I won't translate that. But there were all these gifts, and they ended up, this is the beginning of the Smithsonian Museum, because they didn't know what to do. And in America, legally they can't accept gifts, like the president. It's amazing quality of this country, because they recognize the power, the corruptible nature of gifts. So they have to, you know, if you give something, it gets registered and it goes into, so like when I went, I gave actually a hilya of the Prophet ﷺ, for that Sidi Muhammad Zakaria was writing when he heard the bombs go off in the Pentagon. He was actually writing a hilya when he heard the plane crash, because his house right like a few miles from the Pentagon. And I asked him what he was writing, and he said, "Kana ya'fu wa yasfah." He used to forgive and not punish. I swear to God, true story. And I just said, "Oh, can I take that? Because I'd like to give that as a gift, you know." And so he gave it to me. And I gave a translation, Essential Qur'an from Thomas Cleary. And the night before, I put all these stickums on all the most important ayahs, because I said, I know you probably don't have time, but just read these, right? Because we have to engage these people, you know. This is part of our religion. The Prophet ﷺ, he sent messages to the leaders, and he sent them with respect. إِلَى عَظِيمَ الرَّوم. He didn't say إِلَى حَقِيرَ الرَّوم, you know, إِلَى الْمُشْرِكَ الْكَذَّابِ, you know. He said إِلَى عَظِيمَ الرَّوم. Like he spoke with, because this, even Fir'aun, Allah told Moses, اذهب إلى فرعون. Moses and Harun were told, اذهب إلى فرعون وقولا له قولا لينا. Speak gently to him, not harshly, because rulers, they don't, if you speak harshly to them, it doesn't work, they just get angry, right? So that's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But, and then also another, people don't know this, but at the Washington Monument, the only foreign country that donated to build the Washington Monument was the Ottomans. And there's a plaque on the 14th floor. It says, from Sultan Abd al-Majid ila Vilayat America, you know. And then it says in Turkish, for continued friendship. You know, so they were thinking they were weak. And the thing about weak people is you don't want enemies when you're weak. You want friends, right? Because you can't defend yourself. Weak people can't defend themselves. And so it's better to make friends. But the Prophet ﷺ, I think one of the things that really struck me when I, you know, just studying the Prophet was, and I don't know any other religion that has this. I mean, they have in Bhakti Yoga, it's a devotional practice the Hindus have where they, you know, have devotions to all their daily acts and things like that. But there's no prophet, I think, that I know of that gave their followers prayers for everything. It's just amazing. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave prayers for every act that human beings do. And this is an age where they're recognizing all the benefits. You know, this is a civilization, it takes them a very long time to work things out, you know, the Europeans, and by extension, the American people that are from Europe. It takes them a very long time to work things out. Like Muslims worked out that comfortable shoes are really important because you spend a lot of time in shoes. It took them like a couple thousand years to work that out. So now they finally have comfortable shoes, and they make shoes without heels so you can just slip into them. Like Muslims work that out. Like now they don't have shoelaces anymore. Like Muslims never had shoelaces because they take off their shoes all the time, right? It's very interesting. But they've worked out that mindfulness is really important. So now if you're working in a corporation, they'll have a seminar on mindfulness to help you deal with all the stress, right? But here's the question, what is their mind full of? So I wanted to find out where mindfulness came from. And it's actually a translation, even though it's found even in the 16th century, but it actually came from a translation of a Hindu text by an Oxford professor in the 1880s. And he was translating a word which means the remembrance of God. I'm not making this up. So that's how the word came in. It was originally meant to be the remembrance of God. And he translated it as mindfulness. So that's real mindfulness, is remembering God. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. كَانَ يَذْكُرُ اللَّهَ فِي كُلِّ أَحْيَانِهِ. Aisha radiallahu anha said in the Sahih that he remembered Allah in all of his states. And he said the best thing that you can do is remember Allah. And one man asked him, he said, Ya Rasulullah, كَثُرَتْ عَلَيَّ شَرَائِعُ الْإِسْلَامِ. There's so many rules now. دُلَّنِي عَلَى شَيْءٍ أَتَشَبَّثُ بِهِ. Give me something I can hold on to. And he said, لَا يَزَالُ لِسَانُكَ رَطْبًا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Let your tongue always be moist with the dhikr of Allah. So that's one of the most important things in our life, is just to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's not easy to do these prayers. I'm telling you from real, many attempts at trying to do a whole day where I don't forget a prayer. It's not easy to be mindful because the mind it tends to get distracted very easily. We're very distractible creatures. And the word distraction in Latin, distractere, means to be pulled apart, right? And that's why distracted in older English meant crazy, a crazy person. So Bethlehem or Bedlam in England was a hospital for the insane, and their tag was Bethlehem, a hospital for the incurably distracted. The incurably distracted. And you can see how somebody would, you know, the thing about people, and may Allah protect us from losing our minds, because it's a ibtila, it's a huge ibtila, and a lot of people are losing their minds today. And the Prophet, one of the things he said about these latter days is he said, تَعْزُبُ عُقُولُ أَهْلِ ذَلِكَ الزَّمَانِ. Their intellects would go. So part of it is all this dementia and Alzheimer's. Even young people now, younger and younger people are getting these diseases. But also the madness of the time, like not knowing definitions of a male and a female. I mean, that's a type of madness. And these poor people, like when you see them, you be careful, don't mock people. The Prophet didn't mock people. When he saw people in tribulation, he said, and it's one of my favorite du'as, and I say it a lot, Alhamdulillah alladhi afani mimma ibtaraka bihi wa faddalani ala kathiran mimman khalaqa tafdila. Praise be to the one who has protected me, given me a state of well-being, and not afflicted me with what you're afflicted with. He didn't say it out loud, obviously, because it would have hurt the feelings of that person. But he that's what he said when he saw somebody in tribulation. He would praise Allah, and he said, Iyakum shamata. He said, don't have Schadenfreude. Don't be happy when you see your enemies harmed or afflicted, because he said, Allah might ya'fuhum wa yabtalik. He might give them afiyah, well-being, and give you the tribulation that they had. And somebody said, nobody will expose the faults of anybody except that Allah will try them with that fault before they die. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, you know, veil people. Why do you want to expose people? But that shamata is a really dangerous thing. So when you see mad people, just be grateful that you're not mad. And there's a lot of unhinged people. There's a lot of really unwell people. It's just an age. I mean, we can see it out there. You know, I think about it in my own self, because I get very frustrated on the phone when they put you on this hold and say, for 1, dial 2, for 2, dial 3. And you're like, you know, after about 10 minutes of this, 15 minutes of your life that you'll never get back, you know, with this music, you know, like this deathly music, you know, like zombie music, you know. And then I'm thinking, like, I've got all these like sabr and like all these principles that I know, and I'm thinking about people out there who don't have a practice, who don't have any means of, I mean, I swear, a man rode his bike up here, and he got to the top of the hill, and he was maybe in his 30s, and I said, can I help you? Like, genuinely, you know, because he was looking at his thing, and I thought maybe he was lost or something, I don't know. I said, can I help you? He said, why do you guys always ask me that? You know, he just literally looked at it, and I was like, whoa. You know, and then he just says, you know, get out of my face or something. And I said, hey, hold on, can I talk to you for a second? And then he says, why come up here? And they always say, what, you know, like you don't want me up here or something, the gate's open. And I just like, I was like, you know, and the thing about experiences like that, I mean, here I am mentioning it because it affected me. Like, you're getting somebody else's negativity, and they're really like, you can feel it. You know, it's something, it's very unpleasant. And sometimes it's hard to shake that off. Like, it might stay with you for the rest of the day if you're not careful. Or you start thinking about it or obsessing over it, like what happened, what went wrong there. But that's more and more the way, and this is not, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, it wasn't like that when I was a kid, I guarantee you. Like, I see, yesterday I was driving, and this man put his blinker on. I slowed down, because that's the way I was taught to drive. The other guy sped up to make sure he couldn't get in. And I was just like, we've all, like, people are out there, there's no adab on the road. What's gone wrong? Akhlaq, tarbiyah, sabr, hilm. These are the qualities that the Prophet came, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا. He came to teach us how to be human. And it's not easy. People think it's a birthright. It's not a birthright. Raghib Isfahani said, Al-jahl insilakhu al-insaniyati an al-insan. Ignorance is the flaying of humanity from the human being. And ignorance in Arabic is to react, to get angry. You know, the jahil is the one he reacts, like that man. That was jahil. Even if you're Einstein, if you're reacting like that, it's funny how we use that as a metaphor, like they got us. Yeah. So we should, even if you're a Ghazali. Yeah. You know, I mean, the man who gave us the atom bomb. Thanks a lot. Right? And then regretted it the rest of his life. Yeah. Became an anti-nuclear after helping to. They all, Lilienthal, I mean, it's amazing, all those guys. Yeah. They call it the Islamic bomb now. Can you believe that? It's a Jewish bomb. They invented it. Our ummah would have never invented that in a million years, because the Prophet said, "La yu'adibu bin nar illa rabbun nar." Nobody punishes with fire, and that's what nuclear bomb is. It's fire. It's a conflagration. It's radiation. It's like heat. They're incinerated. I mean, they're just the shadows of the poor Japanese people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's just shadows. They're just shadow of the person, because it was just annihilated flash. You know? But they call it Islamic bomb now. You know, I mean, poor Iran. They just don't want to get bombed. They don't want to bomb anybody, but they don't want to be bombed, because isn't it funny how the only countries that don't get attacked are the ones that have nuclear arsenals, right? I mean, North Korea, you know, Rocket Man. That's what he's called, Rocket Man. But nobody is invading North Korea, right? Iraq got invaded, Libya, Yemen, all these countries, Kashmir. If Kashmir had nuclear, nobody would have gone in there. So you can't blame these poor people. It's a horrible thing, because now we have this madness. In any case, this amazing Prophet ﷺ, so we did this, I did this with Dr. Asad Tarsin, the mindful messenger. They're called occasional prayers. They're ad'iyat al-ahwal. So they're the prayers of his ahwal, his occasions. Whatever hal he was in, he had the prayer. And, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ مَا يَعْبَأُ بِكُمْ رَبِّي لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ. Like, had it not been for your supplication, your Lord would have no concern for you. Yeah. Like, it's through supplication that we have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this goes through, first of all, I talk about why he's the mindful messenger, and that emulating the Prophet comprises of obligatory as well as voluntary practices. The obligatory aspects are easily known through the books of jurisprudence and sacred law, the wajibat. But the Prophet also has voluntary or supererogatory practices, and they are many. One of the most important ones is feeding the hungry. So the Prophet for 10 years, he fed 70 homeless on average every day. 70 homeless. So I calculated that, and it was about 500,000 meals that he did. Homeless people. I mean, that's a sunnah, to feed homeless people. 500,000 meals. Amazing. Yeah. So he said the first khutbah that he gave, that the rabbi went to see it, he actually relates it, he became Muslim, right? And so Abdullah bin Salam, he heard the first khutbah. He wanted to hear, what's this man have to say? And the first thing he said, Afshu salam, spread peace. Wa at'imu ta'am, feed people. Feed people. And then he said, when Shaykh Abdullah met Hillary Clinton in Qatar, she was then the Secretary of State. She said, what can we do to improve our relations in the Muslim world? And he said, stop dropping bombs and start feeding people. He said in Mauritania, there's a street called Shari' John Kennedy. And if you ask people who John Kennedy was, the older Mauritanians, they would say, هذا رجل صالح من أمريكا كان يطعم الفقراء. He was a righteous man from America. He used to feed poor people. Because they would get the wheat that said Hadiyya min America, as like a gift. La lil bay'. It literally said La lil bay', not for sale. It was a gift. And so people saw, oh, that's good. Because if you feed people, they like you. If you drop bombs on them, they tend not to like you. It's human nature, right? Yeah, it's pretty basic. Yeah, it doesn't take a Ghazali to know that. So also sheltering, raising orphans. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there's a hadith where he said he was about to go into paradise, but a woman got in before him. It's a hadith. And it's not a bad hadith, it's not a fabricated hadith. He said it was a widow who raised her orphan children and lost her looks and lost her just in sacrificing for her children. In another one, he said, Ana was sa'fa, the woman, safa'a, the woman who loses her looks and avoids her zina to raise her children after her husband dies. In other words, she sacrifices her life for her children. He said, I'm with her like this in paradise. And he put his sabab and his wustat together. Subhanallah. So helping widows. I mean, the Prophet said, Al-Qaimu ala al-armala kal-mujahid fi sabilillah. The one who maintains a widow is like a mujahid fi sabilillah. I mean, if you just find one widow and just help that person out. Because it's really hard in our community, especially because a lot of these women they don't have skill sets in the older generation. I mean, now the younger generation do. But traditionally, a lot of these women were housewives and things like that. And they lose a husband. If they don't have a social system to help them, it's very difficult. So that's a big thing. Orphans. Ana wal yatim kahateni fil jannah. Ana wa kafil al yatim kahateni. He said about the one who takes care of him. He was an orphan, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he knew direct experience of what it's like to be an orphan, and Allah provided him with great caretakers, but he understood the state of the orphan. Sheltering the homeless, visiting the sick, burying the dead, and countless other acts of mercy. But another one is just this idea of prayer, because it's the central pillar. Amud ad-Din is prayer. And so he did all these amazing prayers. So it's really good to try to learn these. The first one that we put in the book was going to bed. The Prophet said, Bismika Allahumma amutu wa ahya. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari. Just in the name of Allah, I live and I die. Amutu, I die and I live, actually. So one of the Salaf, he said that he was amazed at people who deny the resurrection when every single night Allah has given them an analogy for it. He causes them to die in their sleep, and then he resurrects them in the morning. You just wake up after being like a dead person. You see somebody sleeping, sometimes with older people, and I've had because I worked as a nurse, and I had really old people, and I'd come in and I think, oh, are they still alive? Because sleep people, they look like they're dead. Beautiful du'as, all these du'as. They're just amazing. I mean, to me, this is like a proof of our Prophet ﷺ, just these amazing du'as. So I'll just say, if we all try to do this, it'll really change your life. And one of the things that you can do to remind you is like on your mirror, put the du'a, Allahumma kama hassanta khalqi fa hassan khuluqi, going out, like I have on the door to leave the house to the masjid, which is an amazing dua of asking for light in all your, اللهم اجعل في قلبي نورا وفي لساني نورا واجعل في سمعي نورا واجعل في بصري نورا واجعل من خلفي نورا ومن أمامي واجعل من فوقي نورا ومن تحتي نورا اللهم أعطيني نورا اللهم اجعل لي نورا اللهم اجعلني نورا. It's amazing, different riwayat, but it's a beautiful hadith. And the Prophet said, بشر المشائين في الظلم إلى المساجد. بالنور التام يوم القيامة. It's mutawatir hadith. Like, give good news to people who walk in the dark to the masajid. They'll have complete light on the day of judgment. Right? The Prophet, some people don't know this, but the Prophet, as far as I know, I don't know anybody who had the flashlight before, but the Prophet gave a stick to a man because he went home at night and there were snakes in Medina, and he was worried. And so the Prophet gave him a stick, and he said just to put in from it, and he said a light came from it so he could see the path. And the first flashlight that we know of. See, now it's nothing, like people, right? So I'll just end this with the dua of Istikhara, because the Prophet, first of all, Dr. Asad and I worked a lot on this translation to get this, because Istikhara, it's such a beautiful prayer. And we, So the thing about isti'ana, we ended it with this prayer, because Istikhara is one of the great gifts of this ummah. And I'll just tell you one amazing story about Shaykh Abdullah, a true story. So he was in Jordan, and they were driving, somebody from the palace was driving the car, and he fell asleep. This was like 12 at night, they were going to the airport. And he fell asleep, and the man hit a telephone pole, and he died instantly. And his son broke his leg, and Shaykh Abdullah broke his nose. He hit and there was blood everywhere. So when his son saw it, he actually thought he was really seriously sick. And he started screaming. And he said, his dad took his hand, he said, La bas, astakhartullah. He said, don't worry, I made istikhara. In other words, it's good. Because the Prophet ﷺ gave us this dua, because anything that you do, if you do istikhara, whatever happens is good. If you did istikhara. And the Prophet did istikhara in all of his affairs. So anything that's of any importance in your life, it's really important to do istikhara. Before you travel, before you get married, definitely do istikhara. Even if it doesn't work out, you did istikhara, so it's good. Alhamdulillah. But inshallah, it should work out. You have to work at marriage. Yeah. I mean, the spouse, we're tribulations for each other, right? I mean, what's a libas? Hunna libasun lakum, wa antum libasun lahun. What's a libas? It's to cover your aura. So they see your aura, you see their aura, literally and figuratively. So it's just, you have to be patient with your spouse, and especially rifkan bil qawarir. The Prophet said, be gentle with the hearts that break easily, the brittle ones, right? So this dua, which is from Jabir, it's in Sahih Bukhari, and the Prophet used to teach this. They said, like he taught the Qur'an to them. كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلمنا الاستخارة في الأمور كلها كسورة من القرآن. He said, صلى الله عليه وسلم, إذا هم بالأمر فليركع ركعتين ثم يقول. So this is very important.